Hello and welcome everybody, this is Roland Hartmann from graphicinmotion.com and it is tutorial time again. In this tutorial I will show you how you can create this kind of a Christmas tree animation. So let's take a look at the preview that I made here. You see we have this little light flowing down the path of a Christmas tree, an abstract version of a Christmas tree of course, and it is emitting some particles, it is emitting a light streak, and it is emitting some stars here. So if you follow me along on YouTube or also on Video Hive, you probably know that I used the same technique in the After Effects template that I produced about 1 year ago. And let's take a look at this quickly. And the same technique is used here, and I got a lot of questions to make a tutorial about this technique. And yeah, now I want to share how I made the Christmas tree, but of course I cannot show the whole animation of this template because this would take way too much time for a tutorial. So let's start with just this Christmas tree animation. But I am sure if you know the technique how to make this tree, then you will be able to build on that and use this for your own projects. Before I get started with this tutorial, I want to point out that we need a few things to realize this animation. So first of all, we need Trapcode Particular. If you do not have the Trapcode Particular plugin, you can download it from the Red Giant website and download the trial version. You will also need a version of Cinema 4D. If you own After Effects CC, then you have Cinema 4D Lite included, and this will be perfectly fine. If you work with an older version of After Effects like CS5 or CS6, then you will need an extra Cinema 4D installation on your system. Okay, now let's get started with the tutorial. So first of all, I want to create a new composition and call this Christmas tree animation. And I want to make sure that it is HDTV 1080 25 frames. Of course, you can use whatever setting you want. In my case, I want to make this animation 10 seconds long, and I click OK. Now I want to create a new Cinema 4D file. So I select my composition, go to Layer and select New Cinema 4D file. Now After Effects opens up this dialog box and we have to save the Cinema 4D file to a location. So I will call this, or actually I can overwrite this one here. Just save it. Yes, that's okay. And now After Effects will create a Cinema 4D layer. Let's go back to After Effects quickly. We'll create the Cineware plugin here, and we'll also open up Cinema 4D Lite. If you have another version of Cinema 4D installed, then it will open up the full version of Cinema 4D. Okay, so in Cinema 4D, we want to create the emitter animation for our Trapcode Particular plugin. As you probably know, you can use lights in Trapcode Particular to work as an emitter. So now I want to create a light that is animating along a path, or along the path of our Christmas tree, like you saw in the preview. And this is way easier using Cinema 4D than setting up this animation manually in After Effects. It will be possible, but I really prefer to work this way. But before I do anything here, I want to change the size of my composition here, or of my preview window. So I want to go to the render settings here and then use the same preset as I used in After Effects, the HDTV 1080 25, because then we have the same frame size here. Now I want to add a path, and in my case I want to use the helix path because this is perfect to build our abstract shape of a Christmas tree. First of all, let's make sure that we are in the attributes window here, and now we can change some object properties here. So the first thing I want to do, I want to change the plane orientation to XZ, and then I want to change the end radius to 0, and I want to increase the end angle to, let's say, 1800. This is the same that I used for the preview version. I think in the original template I used a bit more, so you can of course increase this, and then you have a few more of these circles here, or these helix splines here. But just for the sake of this tutorial, I will leave it at 1800 degrees. And what I also want to do is I want to change the height here to 400 centimeters. So this is kind of a big Christmas tree, you know, 4 meter tall Christmas tree. Now let's create a new camera, and by default, it will create the camera from your actual view. So I have to reposition this. So select the camera, go to the coordinates and just zero out all the values, all the positional values. Do not zero out the scale values, but zero out the rotation values. Then we will have a camera that sits right in the middle of our Cinema 4D world. And I will just pull it back on the Z-axis to get the Christmas tree into the frame. Now let's enable the camera, and you see the Christmas tree is sitting on the floor here. So I want it to be just floating in the middle of our world, like so, approximately. We can change the camera position later on in After Effects, but it makes sense to position it now a little bit. So I think this is quite good. Okay, so far so good. So we can save this out in the meantime. And now let's create a new light, and I will create such a standard light here. And I want to animate this light along our path or along our spline. And therefore I select the light, right click and use the Cinema 4D tag that's called Align to Spline. So let's choose Align to Spline. And with the tag selected, I drop in my helix spline into the spline path here. And now I can change the position value, and you see my light is traveling around the path. So this is actually a very powerful setup. You can create any kind of spline you want. You can, of course, draw a freehand spline or Bezier spline or whatever, and then just put a light on it and make it animate on the spline. Export this data, I will show you this in a moment, to After Effects, and you can create the craziest animations with Trapcode Particular. What we have to do now is we have to set some keyframes here. So let's go to our start position, which should be on the top of our tree. So set the position value to 100% and move to frame 0. And now hold down Control and set a keyframe here. So let's say I want my animation to be approximately 150 frames long. So I will set the duration of our Cinema 4D comp here to 150 frames. Move my cursor to the end of this animation and go to my Align to Spline tag, set the value to 0 and create a new keyframe by holding down Control and clicking this little icon here. And now you see we have created a simple animation. And now I can save my file again. And yes, we could think that now everything is fine. I could go to Cinema 4D now, and you see it did actually really update everything. So make sure that you just drag out the duration of your Cinema 4D file or layer here. And you see that the light is traveling along our path. So how do I get my light now into After Effects? There is this option to extract the scene data, but if I click this, you see that, okay, we have light and we have a camera, but the light is not moving. And this is because Cineware will not apply the tag to the light here. So we need to bake this somehow. Let's delete this for now. Let's go back to our Cinema 4D Lite version. And to bake this animation, I needed a few tries to figure out how to make this in Cinema 4D Lite. In a standard Cinema 4D version, it's not that difficult. You go to Windows and open up your timeline window, and then you can simply, let me change this quickly so that we have not only the animated properties visible here, so we need all properties. And now you could select the light, you go to function, and then there would be this option that says bake object, but this is not included in Cinema 4D Lite. So we need to have a little trick here and a little workaround. And this is the following. Select the light here, make sure that your cursor is on frame 0, and now hold down the F9 key and press play. And you will see what After Effects or what Cinema 4D is doing. So do not release the F9 key until the animation has run through one time. Now I can release the F9 key and stop the playback. And you see what happened here. So if I open up now my light, and if I open up the position data and move on to my graphs here, you see that Cinema 4D baked out the animation or the position values of our light. And this is exactly what we need, because this is the data that After Effects can then read and import. What I can do now, because I really do not need any scale values, so I can go to my light here. Let's close the timeline for now, we do not need it. And I can hold down Control and Shift and deactivate the animations on the light scale and on the light rotations, because we just need the position values here. Now we can also delete the tag here. You do not have to delete it, but you can delete it because we do not need it anymore. But actually I will leave it because it really doesn't matter. You see that the light is still traveling along. So now I will save my Cinema 4D file again, and I can move to After Effects. And if I select my layer and in the Cineware Effect Controls click Extract Data, then you see now we have the light, the After Effects light, traveling along our path. Cool, now I can delete this Cinema 4D layer because I actually do not need it anymore. I have my camera here, I have my light here, and this is everything I need so far. Now what I want to do is I select both of these layers and drag them out so that they cover the whole duration of our composition. And I want to create a new layer. Let's go to Layer and create a new solid, call this Particles. And to this layer I want to apply the Trapcode Particular effect. So what I want to do now is I need to rename my light. My light needs to be renamed, and you need to call it emitter, otherwise Trapcode Particular will not realize that this is the light that you are referring to. And now let's go to the emitter settings in the particular effect here, and let's change the emitter type from point to lights. And you see that now immediately Trapcode will start emitting particles following along this light. Now the only thing we have to do is to play around with our settings here and create a few different particle setups here. So first of all, what I want to do is I want to create my light streak. So I will select my particular effect here and press enter to rename it, and I will call it light streak. For the light streak, I do not want to have any velocity on my keyframes. I do not want to have any velocity random. And so I zero out all these velocity properties. I want the emitter size to be 0 or 1. So let's take this down to 1. And you see that we have a particle chain here right now, which is doing nothing. It's just emitting, and then it's sitting there and yeah, dying off again in the end. So now let's move on to our particle type here, particle options. And I want to make this visible for the whole animation duration. So let's say live should be 10 seconds. And I do not want the particle type to be a sphere. I want it to be a streaklet. And now you see that the streaklet is a little bit small. So let's increase the size. This is too big. So to something like, I don't know, whatever you want. I think I will set it to 12 for now. And you also see that we do not have enough particles emitted because we can still see the points here. And I want this to be a one streak. So I go up to my emitter again. Should have done this before actually, and increase the particles per second to about, I do not even know what I had there, 500 maybe. Let's see. 500 could be enough. Now what I want to do is I want to make sure that my emission stops exactly the same frame as my light stops. So let's select the emitter and press U, and you see we have the last frame or the last keyframe right here. So let's set a keyframe 1 frame before the end here for our particle count, particles per second. Let's move forward 1 frame and let's set it to 0, because then the emission stops and we will not get some ugly blob here. Okay, so this is quite good. Now we will make this a little bit more refined. So let's go to the particle setups again, or particle options again. So now let's turn down the opacity here to make the streak look a little bit more lightish. And I want the blend mode to be add here. So now if I zoom in and you see that it doesn't look good, you know, it's just a little bit of edgy. It's not a smooth curve. So I need to go back to my emitter settings again and change the position subframe from linear to 10 times linear or even linear smooth. So I think this is the best looking option here. So I will choose this. And now let's see how this looks like. And I think that doesn't look too bad. What you can do now if you want is you can go into your particle settings and you can go to the streaklet settings and play around with the streaklet. So you can say, I want to have more streaks. maybe 14, then Particular will create more small streaks, which is pretty cool. I can change the streak size, decrease them, then they are thinner lines here, or I can of course increase them, then they get a little bit thicker. So in my case, I think that a few thinner lines are quite cool. This is too big, way too big actually. So 50 looks not too bad. So let's stay with 50. Okay, now I want to change the color of my particles. So go to the particle color and I will take something like an orange because this will look like a little bit of golden. So let's see what I need here. Something like this maybe. I have to create a background, by the way, to create the look. So let's create a new solid. Call it BG for background. And move it down there. Actually, I will reorder this a bit because I like my camera to be on top of my composition. So everything is nice here. And I will apply a gradient here, a gradient ramp. If you work with an older version of After Effects, it's just called ramp. And apply it to my background. And now I want to set it to a radial ramp. Move this one color to the middle here. And the other color, oops, not the layer, just this point here, out a bit. And now I will take these nice dark red colors. So something like that. And take a darker red right here, really dark, or even black. Yeah, like that. Now I can change the ramp with this here. But I think this looks quite good. And I also like the color of my particles. I could now go to my particles and maybe increase the opacity a bit. So let's make them 5, because then the streak is a little bit more obvious. Okay, so far so good. Now we have the base form of our Christmas tree. What I want to do now is I need to create another instance of our particle effect. And instead of duplicating the layer and filling up my composition with layer and layer and layer, I will simply duplicate the particle effect on my particles layer. So select this particle effect and press Ctrl and D, and now we have a second light streak, which we do not need, of course. So I will select it, and now we call it snow, because now I want to create this kind of small snow particles. So let's open this up, and before I open it up, actually I want to reorder them because I want my snow particles to be on top of my light streak. If I go inside my emitter now, or inside my particle settings, I can change from streaklet to sphere because I want these to be spheres. And you see nothing is happening. And this is because we have to set up the right blend modes. So let's go to our rendering here and let's select the blend mode. And in my case, I want to use the blend mode of add. And still nothing is happening. This is probably because the particle opacity is very, very small. Actually, it is not because of that. So I'm not sure what's happening. Let's see. This is typical, that something is not working when I'm recording a tutorial. I think I know what I missed. I didn't set a render mode for my light streak layer. I need to set a render mode here. I could set it to normal. Oh yeah, you see that worked. Too good, in fact. Now we can see the snow particles. I think we need to work a little bit on these. They're not looking really good. So I will turn down the velocity to 30 for now. I will go down to my particle size, set it to 1. And this looks way better. And you also see that by changing the blend mode to normal, now we cannot see our background anymore. In this case, for this project, it's not a big deal because I just can select the whole layer here and set this blend mode to add, and now my background is visible and the particles are also blending in really nicely with the background. Okay, so what we have got here now is I will make a quick preview, but maybe I will change the resolution to half here to make a little bit of a faster preview. And you see now the particles are also emitting from our point here, and yes, now they are flying around quite wild and without any control, but we will change this in a moment. What I want to do first of all is I want to go into my emitter settings, and I want to increase the particle amount because we need a few more of these snow particles. So let's select our particles layer, let's press U on our keyboard, and let's go to our snow layer or snow instance of particles. Move to this first keyframe here and set it from 500 to maybe 1500. Let's see, maybe this is too much, but no, actually I think it's not too much. So let's use 1500. That looks quite good. And what I also want to change is I want to change the size of the emitter. I want it to be a little bit bigger, you know, so let's make this about maybe 10 times 10 times 10, maybe even bigger, 50 times 50 times 50. Let's see, maybe this is too big. Yeah, actually it's too big. 20 times 20 times 20. And this looks a little bit better. Yes, it does. Okay. What I want to do now is I want to set up the velocity values a bit better. So velocity of 30 is fine. I will use some air resistance, so I will increase this actually a little bit. So let's set it to 50 for now. Let's set the velocity random to something like 25. Velocity distribution, this is always a hard one. Don't know, something, you know, at least some value, 0.5 or whatever. Velocity from motion, very subtle, maybe 5. Let's take a look what this does now. They fly out pretty wild, but actually I like it. So this is okay for now. Now we have to deal with the physics a little bit. So let's close down our particle emitter and let's close the particle settings, the render settings, we can close them too. And let's go to the physics tab here. And now it's getting more interesting. In the physics tab now we can change or we can influence the behavior of our small particles. So let's open up the air tab here. And first of all, I want to set some air resistance. Air resistance is, if I make this really high, like a value of 5, it doesn't sound like a high value, but for air resistance is quite a high value. You see that after a certain amount, in this case a very short amount, the air resistance gets so strong that the particles do not move anymore. So this is probably not really air, but it's more like, I don't know, jelly or whatever they are moving in here. So let's just turn this down to 1. If we set this to 1, you see now they are flying out, still flying out, and then they are some kind of freezing or stopping. So 1 is probably even too much. So let's set the air resistance to 0.5 and let's see how this looks. Now they are getting a bit slowed down, but not that much. And yeah, I'm not sure. I have to tweak these settings. You know, these particle setups and these kind of animations always are a trial and error. Tweak settings, because now, you know, the air resistance is low, so I can go into the emitter setting and can lower my velocity maybe to 35, because then they do not shoot out so far, or even to 25. You always have to go back and forth and change settings, and this is what it's like to work with Trapcode Particular, you know, even if you are used to this plugin and if you know your way around it, you will have to, tweak settings, that's it. So I think this looks not too bad. What I want to do is I want to add a little bit of gravity because I want them to fall down, you know. So let's go to our air here again, or to our physics tab, and let's set the gravity, and now I have no idea how much. Let's see, 50, way too much, 25, way too much, 15, could work, but I think 10 is enough. Let's see. So they are emitting, they're starting to fall down slow, so this looks not too bad. Let's see. I actually really like this. I really like this. It looks quite good. Okay, so now I want to add a little bit of turbulence here. So let's go to our turbulence field and let's first of all affect the position. So let's see how much we need here. A little bit, maybe 80. And now let's see what this does. And you see that after a while, the particles now get affected by this turbulence field. Looks not too bad, but it's a little bit wobbly and a little bit too much for our feel. I want this to be really subtle and really smooth. So what I have to do is, first of all, I have to decrease the evolution speed here. Evolution speed, let's set it to something like 5. This is probably enough. And I also can change the scale of my turbulence field to something like, I don't know, maybe I'm on 10 is the standard value, maybe 7. Let's see how this looks like. Doesn't look too bad, but I think that I prefer a scale of 10 actually. Let's see. And I think that the influence of the position or the effect position is a little bit too high. So let's set this back to 50. You see that I didn't write down any values and I didn't memorize them. So I'm really just working here as I would do normally. I hope you're not getting bored. You can, of course, use the time while I'm playing around here and yeah, play around yourself, create your own style. I would actually recommend that. Not only to type in the same values as I'm using, because you can probably do way better. So now what I also want to do is I want to affect the size a bit. So here you have to be a bit careful. If I set this to 2, you see something's happening immediately, maybe even 3. And if I want to go really extreme, I set it to 4. Then you see that on some parts, these particles get so small that we cannot really see them. But this creates really nice, yes, a really nice effect. But now what I want to do, and this is what I meant before, that you have to go back and forth and change values. I want to change the size from 1 to 0.5, because then have a really subtle effect. Or maybe now this was too much again, 0.7. Let's see. And actually, I really like the look of this quite a bit. So this looks cool. Yep, I like this. The only thing I have to do now is I want to change the life, because I do not want them to be visible for 10 seconds. These should die off after about 5 seconds, or maybe even, yeah, 5 seconds is okay, I think. And I want to change the size over life, and I will use this preset. So they should start small, or they should start big, and then they go smaller over their lifetime. So let's see what this does now. Now they are building up, and then they are falling down and disappearing. I think that this is exactly what I want. It looks completely different than in my first example, but I kind of like it, you know. It's dynamic and it looks like a little bit of a snowish movement going on. Okay, so far so good. What I can do now, I can change the color. I want these to be a little bit brighter so that they blend in a bit better. Let's see. Yes, looks nice. Okay. And let's say that I'm satisfied with my snow particles. I would really recommend you to play around with these values, to go back and forth, try out different settings, and really find the look that you are looking for. For my template that I showed you before, I made this for hours or days, just working on these perfect setups, you know. So now let's move on and let's create one more instance of our particle effect. And now we want to create some custom particles. So we want to create stars, these stars flying out here. First of all, what I want to do is I want to create a new instance, a new duplicate of my snow here. So I select it and press Ctrl D, and I will rename it and call it stars. Now with my layer selected, I press U on the keyboard and I will go to the stars emission here, particles per second, and I want to turn this down quite a bit because I do not need so many stars. And to make the stars visible, we need to create a new composition with our custom layer in it. So let's go to composition, new composition, and now I want to make a composition that is doesn't need to be big, can be very small, like 50 times 50, and it also can be only 1 frame long because we do not need many frames here. If you want to use multiple instances of particles, you can do this, of course, create different stars. You can, of course, also create snowflakes in Photoshop or in Illustrator, then import them to After Effects, and then you can create a composition with more than 1 frame. And you can put in all these, and maybe I will show you this. Just let's say I want to create 3 frames here, and this will be our stars particles. Okay, before I talk myself crazy, I will just show you how to do that. So let's go to our tool here, click on it and stay with the mouse on it, with the mouse button clicked, and select the star tool. And first of all, I want to create a very, very simple and, oops, undo, okay, again, a normal star here, like so. Actually, this is really small, right? But I think it should work. So let's go to the poly star path here, and let's see what we have here. So the outer radius is a little bit too big, and the inner radius too. So let's make a nice star like this, and that's fine. Now let's trim this to 1 frame so that it is only visible for 1 frame, and we can duplicate it and move the second one to the second frame. Now we can go in here and change some settings. So maybe this one will look a little bit different. So the outer radius will be a little bit smaller, the inner radius a little bit bigger. This will be kind of such a star, and I can also, I'll leave it like that. I could also change the points, maybe we'll do that, change it to 8 points. Then we have a little bit of a variety. No. Verity, I have no idea. You know what I mean, in our stars. So I think I'm recording already too long. My mind is fading, I don't know what's happening. Okay, I think I have to concentrate and get this done. So now let's create a 3rd star, move it over to the 3rd frame, and here we will change the settings a little bit. So poly star path. An expert tip that I usually use, but sometimes I forget, especially when my mind starts getting strange and weird. You can type in the effect that you're searching right here in this search bar, and you will find it immediately. So it's way easier like that. Now let's change this back to 5, and let's change the settings here. We make another star that looks like something like that. Okay, now we have 3 different stars. You see 3 very different stars, a bit different stars. And now we go to our Christmas tree animation, and we drag in our composition that we just created, which is called stars particle, and drag it on bottom here. We do not need to see it, so we can make it invisible. Go to our particle setup, and in our stars tab here, let's go to particles, and we change these from sphere to textured polygon, and we want them to be colorized. So let's select textured polygon colorize. And now we see that nothing is happening because the stars are very small. So let's set these now to about something like 5. And I still do not see any stars. That's very strange. 10. Still no stars. 25. Still no stars. What is happening? I know what's happening. Let's see, what do we have in the render settings? No, this should work. This should work. Why is this not working? I'm again confused. Let's go to the physics tab. Let's change the size to 0. Still no stars. I'm worried. I'm worried. So this is set to add. This should work. This stars. I know why it's not working. I forgot something. I'm really sorry, guys. I don't know why, but I'm just a little bit tired, I think. So let's go to the particles again and let's specify the texture. I did not specify the texture. So let's go to texture and then to layer and then particle stars. And now it will look crazy. And we change from current time, because in the current time we have nothing. We only have 3 frames in here. So you choose random still frame. Now we have stars, and a bunch of stars. Awesome. Okay, let's turn down the size to 5. It's too small. 8. Looks better. 10. Very good. random size 50 maybe, so that there's a bit of variation in it. And I think it's still way too many stars, so let's turn these down to 25. That's enough. And I do not want them to get smaller so fast, so I will go to the particles size over life. Actually, I can turn on the lifespan because I want them to be visible maybe 7 seconds. Then they do not fade away so fast. And I also want to change the emitter settings here because I want these to fly out a little bit further. So the velocity, let's increase it to 50. You see now they're flying out a little bit further. And we can just change this back to 10, velocity from motion only 2, just to get a little bit of variety in here. And now I will go to the physics tab and set the gravity to 5. I do not want them to fall down so fast. And I will set the air resistance to a higher value here. So like 1, this looks quite good. And now let's change the rotation in the particle tab. So I want to apply a random rotation, but this should be very subtle. So 3, that should do. Let's take a look. And I think that the emitter is still very, very high. So the emitter doesn't look too bad, but what I want to do is I want to make these small in the beginning and then they should grow over life. So let's go to size over life in the particles tab. I will close this down, go to size over life. And now instead of this preset, we can use maybe this one here. Then they will fade in. They're rotating very fast, so I think I will turn this down. They are too big actually, so I will turn down the size. But the movement from the particles themselves is not too bad. So let's turn down the size to 7. Let's increase the velocity a little bit to, let's say, 60, so that they fly out a little bit further. Emitter size, we can make it small here because we do not need this, like so. Now I want them to rotate a little bit less. Rotation value, set it to maybe 2 or even 1.5. I have to take a look at that. Oh, it's not too bad. Actually, I can rotation speed, set it to 1. Then it's really slow. And what I want to do is I want these to grow a little bit faster. So I need to go into my size over life tab here, and I will change this curve a little bit so that they grow a little bit faster, like so. I think that this is a little bit better. And now I want to decrease the size again because I think that 7 is still a bit too big, so 5. Let's take a look. And yes, I think that this is really cool. Okay, now this is it for the Trapcode Particular work on this animation. You see that it looks quite cool. It's quite organic, and of course it could need more tweaking, but I will leave you to this. You can create your own styles here, improve it. I really recommend to work on this to make it really cool. Add a few more custom particles, add a few more other particles that spit out a little bit further, or to get in some variation here. And what you can also do, if you own the optical flares plugin from Video Copilot, then you could also add a flare. So let's create a new layer and a new solid, call it flare. And let's apply the Trapcode, or the optical flares plugin, not Trapcodes, Video Copilot's optical flares. And now we can go in here and set it to on transparent, of course. Now I want it to track lights, so not 2D, but track lights. You see it will track the light here. Use light intensity, no, no, no. Now I will bring the scale down here because that's way too big. I want it to be blended in better, so I will, instead of take normal, I will take add. And now I can tint it and choose a warmer color here so that it blends in with our golden look here. Pretty cool. And I can of course turn down the brightness a bit so it's not so obvious. I can of course also choose another preset. If you have installed the presets, then you can choose something that's more like Christmas stuff, maybe not right in the lights, but maybe in the motion graphics. Let's see. I think that this is not too bad. Let's choose this one. Maybe make it a little bit bigger. Something like that. Actually, I really do not like it. I would prefer to get rid of these elements now. You know, I like the flare as it is, but I do not like these flare elements because it looks a little bit strange. So you could come in here and just hide what you don't like, you know. Maybe this would be a better option, or choose another preset. Okay, I do not want to change or to waste too much time now for this. Play with it, you know, create your own cool look. If you do not have the plugin, there is of course another option to realize this. So let's delete the optical flares plugin and let's delete this layer. What I want to do now is I will show you how you can make a really quick custom flare. So let's go to composition, let's go to new, and let's create a little bit of a bigger composition than we made before, like 500 times 500, and call it Lite. Okay, and now we will create a new circle, and I will choose the ellipse tool here and make a circle here in the middle. It doesn't need to be big, you know, hold down shift to make a real circle. Now I go to the ellipse contents and transform it and set it to the middle. So I zero out the position values here. Okay. Now I will take a Gaussian blur or a fast blur, whatever you want. You can take whatever you want and blur it. So blur it quite a bit. And now we duplicate this, move it below our thing here. Press S to get the scale value and scale this up. Blur it quite a bit, you know, like so. We can set these to add. Not make much difference, but a bit. So now we have a small light. So I will duplicate this one more time. Make this Gaussian blur value a little bit smaller. Let's go to the contents and the ellipse path and make it smaller. Like so. Even smaller, 20. Let's change the opacity of this one to about, I don't know, oops, sorry, 50. And you see now we have a small light sphere here, and I can make this even a bit more subtle, like changing the opacity of the last one here to 60 something. And now I want to add another shape, and I want to add another star here. So let's select it and let's draw in a star. Let's go to the poly star settings. First of all, make sure it's in the middle. So zero out the transform position. Now let's change the inner radius to a very small value, like really small. I don't know, maybe 2. And now with this selected, we will apply a new blur, and we will take a radial blur. So like so, increase the amount here. Do not spin it, but zoom it, you know, like so. And now we can scale this down a bit, lower the opacity, so opacity, something like that. And you see now we are creating our own little flare here, so we can, or light here, so we can also apply a fast blur to this one now, just to make it a little bit more, or like that. No, 2, no. That's okay. Now let's duplicate this. Let's rotate it a bit. Let's scale it like so. And let's increase the opacity on this one a bit. And also the blur. So let's say this is okay for now. I just created a simple small light here. And what I just realized now is that this composition is way too short. So let's go to the comp settings, and instead of these 3 frames that were still in there from the particles comp, I will set it to 10 seconds. Select all my layers and drag them out so that this is really working. Okay. And now I can go back to my Christmas tree animation, drag in our light, set it on top of our particles here, make it 3D. If you do not see these switches here, you can switch them on and off with F4. So let's make it 3D. You see it is now positioned right here, down here, because this is because of the other coordinate system that Cineware 4D uses. So now we are in the 0, 0 spot here and not in the standard world center of After Effects. Well, it doesn't really matter, because I will parent it to the light anyway. So I will parent this layer to the emitter layer. Now let's select the position and zero this out. 0, 0, 0. And now let's press AA and let's set the accept lights to off, because otherwise you see that it looks black and we do not want this, of course. Zoom in here. And it's a little bit too big, so I will scale it down. I will press F4 to change the blend mode to add. And now I could also put a tint on it to make it, to colorize it a bit. So to take a slight yellow color here to match our overall look. And this is it. So now you have a small light traveling along your animation. The Christmas tree is building up, the particles are looking cool. Okay, so now let's create a preview here. You see that the light is now traveling along with our light and it's forming this really nice Christmas tree. Thank you very much for your patience. I know this was probably not the best tutorial that I ever recorded. I still hope that you at least learned something from it and that you can take this further, that you can implement the techniques that I showed you here for your own projects. I'm always happy if you take a look at my website and if you support me by maybe purchasing the 1 or the 2 After Effects template of mine. My website is www.graphicinmotion.com. You can find a lot of After Effects templates, stock motion graphics, freebies, and of course all my tutorials here. So check out all this cool stuff that we have here. And also please, if you watch this on YouTube, then I would be very, very happy if you subscribe to my channel and if you leave a comment. Maybe you post some videos that you created with techniques that you learned in this tutorial. So thank you very much for watching and I really hope to see you soon. Goodbye.